Is it okay if I go ahead and, like, since the people here are, we're good? 3
Yeah.
after, okay.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get going. And just while we have it on record, just reminding folks that we are just recording for posterity, and so you all can look back and see what look at your questions and see what people are saying about their experiences and how we can be effective as a party to be responsive to those concerns.
I did want to say that the forum is designed to be an open forum to encourage participation from everybody. We really want to hear about what's most important to people who live in rural areas. And just, you know, I know that we have a ton of issues that are important, and so we want to try to make sure to get to everybody, everybody's ideas, and what's important to everybody here. So I just wanted to ask that you bear that in mind if you have lots to say about different topics. There are a lot of parts of Oregon, and we're in all parts and different have different priorities. I do also want to acknowledge the fact that no matter where you are in Oregon, we are conducting this meeting from tribal lands. So please feel free to check out all the ancient indigenous lands that we are a part of in this moment. Respectfully. My name is Lydia. I'm part of the campaign team to elect John Harris Knight, who you have heard from already. John Harris Knight and I both live in Portland, but the other parts of our team, Sarah Spansale and Colette Pare Miller, are both from Jackson County and live there now. They are respectively, Sarah's the city councilor for the city of Medford, and Colette is the city councilor for the city of Talent. So they can definitely offer their perspectives. We care a lot about rural issues. I myself am from rural Georgia. John is from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains in Eastern Tennessee. And so the issues that you all have are familiar to us and important. So with that being said, I want to introduce to you our candidate for chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon, John Harris Knight. Why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right. Thank you, Lydia. And thank you to everybody who's been helping out throughout the campaign. And obviously, thank you to everybody who's here. Obviously, I'm running to be a chair that represents all of you, whether you're on the SEC or not, to make sure that we have a Democratic Party of Oregon that really is not just accountable, but responsive to the needs of all the diverse and various communities across the state. One of the things I hope that we can do throughout this conversation is be respectful of our various perspectives and recognize that while we may understand some of what other people are going through, that their experiences and their experience of their own lives and circumstances are important. And as a party and as a community, I think we need to work to embrace everyone's input as contributions and not as competitions. All those varying perspectives can help us, do great things and bring together all those ideas to find the solutions that we need. Just as a quick introduction, as Lydia said, I am from Tennessee. I was born in the foothills, grew up in what was then a small town in Middle Tennessee. And my mom was a minister at a rural church, a tiny community of Christiana, Tennessee. But I went to college in Memphis, one of the most diverse cities in the United States. And I've lived in Missouri and Kansas. And so I've seen the varying perspectives that are in the middle of the country. And I moved to Oregon to start as an executive director of a rural school in the Mid-Willamette Valley. But for the last 6 years, I've been living in Portland, and where I've lived and my experiences are obviously not the same experiences as well as the challenges that you all have faced in the places where you live. And I've heard various concerns throughout the time talking with delegates and Democrats across the state. I'm not unaware of a lot of the things that might come up today, but I want to make sure that I don't speak for you and let you speak for yourselves. I want to make sure that this is an opportunity for you to be heard and for us to move in the direction toward responding to your concerns in a constructive way. I understand that the things that I've heard and the things that you all are facing, need the attention of the whole party so that we can be a whole party for the whole state. And the first question I have for you, and I'm going to open this up for folks if you would like to contribute your perspective. You can raise your hand using the hand raise function in Zoom. If you're having trouble with that, you can also raise your hand on the screen. I think I can see everybody at the moment. So feel free to just raise your hand. And I want to make sure that people have enough time to share. So I don't want to clip anybody's commentary, but also ask for you all to be respectful and allow space for other people to share their insights and inputs and their experiences. So my very first question is just a basic open question. What have been your experiences in rural Oregon in regard to the political and social climate that you are experiencing in the place where you live? And when you introduce yourself, if you would please say your name, the pronouns you prefer to use, and the county and community that you live in.
Don't be shy.
Yeah. This is an opportunity to share, and I want everybody to feel like this is a place you can share safely.
I had a couple of questions come in over email that maybe you wanted to. We have been helped tremendously by our friend in Douglas County named Christian Ivana.
Hi, Christian.
Yeah. And so Christian is an SCC delegate and also was the campaign manager for Kat Stone's campaign for state senate this time around. And we're really hoping that, we can give help to delegates like her. But anyway, one of the questions is, a lot of times it seems like the Democratic Party is more about keeping the team aspect instead of the uniting aspect, demonizing other parties and resisting working with anyone outside of its circle. As a chair, will you facilitate the continuation of this mindset?
That seemed like an easy question to answer. The simple answer is no. But the more complex answer is, I don't want to presume what other people's mindset is and what their efforts have been, but I do want to say that if we're going to be responsive to the needs of the whole state and every community in it, then we do need to create more systems for taking that input in, making sure people are aware, and again, whether it's the various regional parts of the state, rural communities, that kind of thing, as well as whether we're talking about race, equity, social justice, and those issues. There's often this effort to listen, but not always that those next steps to turning it into an actionable plan that then gets executed, implemented, then assessed and analyzed, and then modified and improved upon. So that's one of the things that I'm really excited about as being chair is to help facilitate that kind of ongoing continual improvement process that's not just listening and awareness, but really developing concrete proposals that then are adopted by the party and then applied and implemented. And that's going to take work from all of us to create and then accomplish. But that's hopefully that's a thorough answer there. But it's not it's not an unchallenging thing to pull off. But I do want to return to that that first question, I really want to open it up to you all to be able to be heard and share your perspective. And so, really open to anyone here saying what they want to say. Okay, great. Joanne?
Hi, I'm Joanne Gordon. I'm from Milo, on the edge of nowhere in Douglas County. And hearing you're from Tennessee in the foothills of the Appalachians, you might understand what's happening in our community. We've been turned into a little Appalachia with them taking all of our resources and not returning enough in exchange for them. The trees are really getting cut. A lot of people ask, I thought clear cutting was illegal. Well, it's not. And I can take people on tours and show you thousands and thousands of acres, half a mile or two off of the highway, where it's just devastated and it's really crazy. So that's a big issue for me. And we can thank Christian for my being here. He lives out here also part-time. And but I do want to thank you. I'm amazed. I guess with Zoom, we can bring in people from other communities, to share their experiences and opinions. I had no idea that anybody cared about the opinions of the little rural people out here in Milo. Look it up on the map if you find out where we are.
All right. I'd say big rural people, right? Not little. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, clear cutting and the impacts on not only the environment but on communities. I hear you. Yeah. Yeah,
the environment too is extremely. I feel like if we could fix Douglas County, we might save the world. And we are controlled by the timber industry and our county commissioners, who make decisions based on what's best for the timber industry, not for the workers, just, the corporate industry. So here we are. I could talk all night, but.
Thank you for sharing, Joanne. I appreciate that. And if you see me looking down, I'm taking notes.
Thank you.
Obviously, I could look back through the video, but I also want to have this handy.
Well, I'm turning off my camera because I'm eating dinner.
Okay. All right, I saw Susan and then Darren. Susan Church.
Unmute myself. I'm Susan Church, she, her, from Grant County in the not far eastern, that would be Wallowa County. And I guess Mike,
so much more.
Somebody is talking to right now.
Oh, we got it. Go ahead. Okay. Susan.
So, and I have a dog in my lap. Get off. Sorry. So I guess some of my concerns are having been part of some of the committees and part of the SCC. It seems like that people from Portland dominate and interrupt the meetings with parliamentary procedures, sort of handcuffing whoever is whoever is the chair or whoever is the parliamentarian. What's happened for us I'm a member of Rules Committee, is we finally got past electronic meetings, which was really put down by the other side. And yet, as we've been sharing, we can talk with one another on Zoom, which is amazing. We can vote on Zoom. There are parameters that need to be followed if we respect and care for one another. And I haven't seen that happening, not from the leadership, but from the floor. And it's really distressing to me to be part of these meetings and to be part of the whole community. So that's my 2 cents worth.
All right, thank you for sharing that. I think there are a lot of people who share that concern, and obviously as chair, I intend to address that in a way that helps make those meetings more functional and smooth. And
Actually, to do that with rebelling people.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a challenge. Obviously, what I want to do is help create a space that's more welcoming and inviting. But in order to get that kind of a community feeling within the SEC, we're going to have to do the work from the committee on up, and from by tapping into our caucuses, and setting up better systems for bringing us together, so we can have these kinds of conversations, so we can recognize that we are all in this together, and that we need to be focusing our attention on serving our communities and getting results, and finding ways to resolve those kinds of concerns before we get to a meeting and before we get to gridlock. But I want to focus on the rural issues at the moment, but your comments are
That is
definitely.
a rural issue.
Yeah, absolutely. If
Yeah.
we can't do the work of the SEC, then we're not going to be able to attend to the issues of rural communities. We're not going to respect those folks like yourself, who've traveled many miles once we are meeting in person again to be a part of these meetings. I definitely recognize that these issues transcend a lot of different circumstances. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Actually, my suggestion as a rural person would be to do more meetings this way for a number of reasons. One, it lessens our carbon footprint. So we don't have all those people traveling to one place. And voices can be heard. Whereas if somebody says, gee, that's a 10-hour drive to get to Portland, I can't do that. So I would hope we would do more meetings like this, even though it's kind of frustrating as we work our way through the system of using Zoom.
Right, and there have been some suggestions along those lines, as well as whether or not we can incorporate a mixed system where some people are in person and some are on Zoom, and or Maestro Conference, or whichever format we end up using at any given time. But definitely want to see all of our ideas come together so we can create something as functional and accessible for everyone as possible. So I appreciate that, Susan. Thank you. All right, Darren.
Well, that was a pretty big question about what are the rural issues in politics. And so kind of tying that background to the DPO, because obviously you're running for DPO chair, my experience is anytime myself or my rural colleagues kind of try to present ideas, it gets shut down by DPO leadership. And kind of along the same lines of what Susan was talking about, is it just right from the beginning turns current leadership versus what's seen as new people, or urban versus rural people. And ironically, I just came from a forum by Jamie McLeod Skinner about bridging divides, but we have challenges like simply reaching people. And anytime somebody's presented ideas for how we can reach out to NAVs, or how we can reach our voters without being able to door knock. In Bend, we have a great neighborhood leader program that hits all the suburban neighborhoods, super effective. Where I live in South Deschutes County, it's a 1/4 mile walk to my nearest neighbor. Knock on doors doesn't let us reach too many people. And there's been ideas presented to leadership that just get shut down as like, no, we don't need that. And so, even before we can get to an SCC meeting, and we don't just want to like write a resolution and try to bring it to the SCC when there's already this factionalized us versus them going into it. So how, as DPO chair, can you facilitate listening to everyone and kind of bridging that divide and not just shutting things down right from the beginning?
Obviously, I'm trying to start doing that right now with this kind of an event. I appreciate that, and I recognize that you and Susan both were commenting on that perception and feeling of an us versus them kind of division, and one side or another. And we're obviously in a big tent party, and that means that we've got as many perspectives as there are people, but at the same time, it feels like we're collecting into these groups. And I think that one of the first steps for dealing with that is events like this. As chair, I would love to do more of these between our state central committee meetings to really facilitate conversation around specific topics. Now, I've also proposed several special committees to address various things, such as the special committee, not unlike the Racial Equity and Accountability and Leadership Committee, to address and recommend proposals that we can adopt with regard to rural communities and how we can better serve them as a party not just listening to you, but to actually turn it into action. And I think that, the function of committees like that could very well be to convene conversations like this so that we can, come together and work through some of those concerns in advance of those meetings, but also to build that level of empathy and awareness, but also solidarity, that feeling that we're carrying this burden together, no matter where we live, but that we need to do it in a way that supports the people who need our support, whether it's rural delegates in rural counties, or whether it's any other community within the state. So a lot of proposals I've been hearing, but I do want to give more time for you all to share. I did see Kim. Kim, you had your hand up earlier. Do you want to contribute?
Sure. So, yeah. So obviously you can tell by my picture, I'm out in rural today. So I was
Hey.
relating to Darren's comment about a closest neighbor a quarter mile. My driveway is a quarter mile. So I always laugh. I went to go check the mail. Then I realized it was Sunday. Oh, well, there was mail in there. I guess I didn't check it yesterday. So sure, there's always going to be complaints against a staff, and there's always going to be complaints against the us versus them being the DPO elected, if you want. And I just have to say that it doesn't matter whether I've contacted Eileen, who serves in rural as our secretary in Shutes County. She's been fantastic. Pete Lee or Casey, I'll admit, all of them have been really good for me, good for Jefferson County. So my biggest question is, if you win, John, and you're serving, you are going to have an us versus them. And so in the meeting, how are you going to change that? Because your first comment to Susan was actually to shut her down. And it's hard because sometimes what we're asking doesn't make sense because we're rural. And maybe that's how it was when you were in Tennessee, where you would go to ask things. And it's not even always understood that we're asking for something different. One of the reasons why I'm calling while I'm walking is because my internet's down. I don't expect as DPO chair, you would be able to fix that. So sometimes I think we ask too much, also. So my first question to you, I guess, would be, is that what would you do to actually change the divide?
Yeah, that's a great point. Obviously, we do need to learn and develop our skills in order to work together better. That collaborative kind of approach that I've been talking about throughout the campaign. And I know we've had that conversation as well. Like the idea of that needs to be something that we develop and do. Again, a lot of the work needs to be done before we get to the meetings. Developing that kind of collaborative approach so that when we are doing our work at the standing committee or special committee levels, as well as with our caucuses, we are really cultivating that kind of connectivity between all the participants. Really having a stepwise function so that input is coming in, people have more buy-in, there's better understanding about what we're voting on and considering. And that's all the stuff that can happen before we ever get to the meeting. But to your question about how do we do that at a meeting, because it's going to take some time to kind of break down some of these barriers maybe we have between ourselves, and to really pull together as an SEC community. That second quarter meeting, that third quarter meeting, those are going to be the first challenges that we face to work together better. First of all, obviously as chair, want to set that tone, want to make sure that that's the tone that I set before we even start those meetings. But more importantly, that as we respect each other's participation, really making sure that we're focusing our energy more constructively. That's something that the chair can emphasize, not just the beginning, but throughout the meeting. But also, if there is if we're divided on an issue, or have people who have concerns about the outcome of rules change, or the direction of the party, or platform resolution, we obviously have to provide space for them to have that disagreement, and to recognize that those are contributions to our ultimate conclusion and solution. I think there are people who do feel shut down, right? And I certainly don't mean to come across to shut it down anyone's perspective or input. Again, this is a process we're going to have to go through as a whole community. We're going to have to be welcoming to each other to be growing and maturing, developing our skills in that regard as we go, but also to give space for each other a little bit and say, we're all in this process together. And if we can maintain that kind of perspective with each other, I think people will learn that we are on the same side. We're all a part of the same, big democratic team. And again, it doesn't mean we can't disagree on a solution, but I think what we have to do is really remind ourselves and each other that it's up to all of us to be kind to each other, to recognize that we're all in different places in this journey as political activists and political social representatives of our communities. And it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take us coming together to come up with what those solutions are together. I don't pretend to have every single answer to every single question, but I think that part of the reason for an event like this is to say, okay, who does have an idea? Who does have a recommendation that we can apply? And that's one of the things I've been trying to do in my conversations with all of you. So let's open that question up and see, the people who are here, what are your proposals to solve those kinds of divisions that we have and the frustrations we have, whether it's in a meeting or whether it's feeling heard. Let's open that up.
Let me follow up with that question then, because it's the same one. So I understand it's one thing actually people at the same table and talking. So an example would be, just talk to me about, let's say we have an SCC meeting, it's the second quarter, and we can't even get an agenda passed. That's not people coming together to work together. That's people already deciding. That's people on the floor. That's in my opinion, that's people on the floor. That's not people. I'm not going to blame the people at the front of the table for how we behave on the floor. And so how are you going to get us to not do that to each other? Because that's us saying, point of order, or I don't do that. So I don't understand how all that works as far as other than to listen to it. And I don't understand how to interrupt. I'm not into that stuff. So how would you stop that? I mean, would you just flat out ask people before the meeting, hey, can you not do that? I mean, how are you going to make that not happen, John?
That's an excellent question. I do want to open that question up to the group. Like, are there suggestions from among the people here who think that they have an idea? But how has that functioned in your county parties, and have you seen success in handling that where you've been? I see Darren.
I want to know what you have to say.
Well,
I want to know too. I'm curious. What are your solutions?
I certainly want to address your questions, but I also want to make sure that we give time for other folks to contribute, and I also want to make sure that you understand that all the solutions that we need for the various functions in the party, it needs to come from all of us and not just from one person. I mean, I can rattle off all my ideas and all my proposals, but again, it's the question of like, do we have buy-in? Do people feel like they're being heard in that process, whether it's the agenda or anything else we do? And so I want to let all of you kind of contribute before I say, okay, this is what I'll do. And that's the way I want to approach being chair. So Darren.
I was just going to say, to me, it seems like there's a broader, I'm not sure what the right term is, but sort of a cultural and attitude thing in the DPO, and the things that Kim is talking about that we see on the floor that are ridiculous are sort of symptoms of that. And the problem kind of needs to be treated rather than on the floor of the SCC into everything leading up to that. And so I guess what I'd like to hear from you when you're answering Kim and Susan on those is, are there things you can do to facilitate a attitude shift before the meeting and everything that leads up to it that would help out by the time we get to the meeting?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Thanks, Darren.
Yeah, thank you. Let me hear what Susan was wanting to say, if Susan had any more that you wanted to add.
Well, let me have to get okay. I guess what my concern is that it seems to me, my experience is that there's a small group, maybe large, that wants to take over for everybody else and not let voices be heard. And they do it by parliamentary shenanigans. That's not helpful. So I guess what my question is, what can you do to ameliorate that problem?
Yeah, okay. That's great. I mean, one of the, like Darren was saying, and like Kim was saying, like, these feelings of division and these disruptions from the floor are definitely ongoing challenges, and I definitely recognize that there are a lot of people who feel this way. It's obviously this is one of the biggest challenges of the last several years, not just the last two. And on the one hand, the parts that need to happen in advance. I've been on nonprofit boards. I've served in various capacities. I've been an executive director of a nonprofit and therefore responsive to the board, as well as president of an environmental nonprofit and then reelected. So leading those challenging conversations. And one of the things that in every nonprofit organization I've been a part of, one of the priorities is training people to be on a nonprofit board, to be the most effective participants they can be, as well as how to be a part of an efficient and smooth moving process. Obviously, there's this question about parliamentary procedure and how we're using it and how we're not using it, and all those kinds of questions. Really facilitating the ability for people to have that kind of training so that they know what is appropriate and what's not, and how to engage properly, and what is not conducive to results from the meeting. Also more importantly, one of the things that the chair can do is propose a special committee. We also there's the possibility that that as a party, as an SEC, we come together and develop strategies for those kinds of situations, whether it's through rules committee or through the collaborative work that we do. But one of the things we need to do is really facilitate collaboration across these various systemic divisions, not just like perspectives and the places where we live, but the different structures of the party. Oftentimes we get to those SEC meetings, and that's the first time we've had a formal way to comment on the subject matter that's coming up, whether it's something from rules or platform, or whether it's even the agenda. And I know that according to the bylaws, the ultimate authority for the agenda sits with admin. The ultimate authority for what the standing committees do are within those committees. But that doesn't mean that we can't solicit input, feedback, really try to incorporate people's concerns and input into those agendas and into the work that we do within those committees. And so part of the issue is that we need to bring in all those voices through that process. I've got a proposal to create a special committee that would specifically work to design into the work we do that collaborative process, that collaborative model. And there are collaborative models for work that have been developed and utilized all over the world. One of the things that I'm going to do is actually share out some videos through Facebook and through emails about how we can do collaborative work in short 5 to 15 minute videos for us to look at and see, okay, this is possible. We can be more collaborative in the work we do, because we hear about this idea of teamwork, but there's a difference between teamwork that you follow the direction of one person, and then there's the teamwork that's collaborative, where we all contribute and we all have input. And I know we're a big group. The Democratic Party is huge, and the SEC is big, and so it can make it feel unwieldy. But again, it's that preparatory work that we have to do of really involving people in the decisions we make, even if it's something as simple as the agenda. To invite members of diverse communities, especially the communities that are hardest to reach through conventional methods, to be a part of what we're doing. And I know we all want meetings to run smoothly, and we all do. And I think the question is that everybody's trying to make a meeting run more smoothly, but we're coming at it in maybe different ways. And so we need to come together and have that conversation in a constructive way. And those SEC meetings are admittedly not the best place to have that conversation. All right, so I see Christian, your hand is up, and then Sarah, and then Jaden.
I think Sarah might have been before me.
Okay, yeah, sometimes the hand raising function doesn't show me people in order. So whichever order you two want to go.
I'll try to make it brief. Thank you, Christian. And I'm Sarah Spansdale, she, her, hers, Jackson County. And I just want to really say I appreciate all the comments. I think we have a lot of rule issues that we can discuss, but this is a completely valid topic for also the rural folks to be discussing here. With that being said, I think I might be one of the people that, you know, Kim would say has tried to obstruct things or made motions or point of orders over the last couple of years. And just for the record, I'm not Multnomah County, I'm from Jackson, so we are in CD2 too. But that being said, I mean, John touched on it, a lot of us have touched on it. It's about being part of a team and working as a team. And one of my concerns about that, when we have members who say that they're not interested in parliamentary procedure or don't know about a point of order or these different things, is that these are the rules that govern us. And I'm not saying that we need to stick with Robert's Rules of Order at all, but I do think it would be great for us looking down the next couple of years, if we don't like parliamentary procedure, that moving forward there, you know, we can look at other types of rules to govern ourselves by. Because really at this point, I mean, I am somebody who obviously cares a lot about that. This past weekend, I was just elected as an Oregon delegate to the National Association of Parliamentarians. So I really appreciate parliamentary, you know, procedure, but I get that not everybody does. You know, and I think that there are ways that we could work around that, and it would be really helpful if we were, I mean, if we're going to work as a team, we should be understanding all of the same rules and procedures so that we're all on the same page. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And to emphasize, as an SEC, we are empowered to create our own environment that we work in, and you know, we do have the potential to, you know, create the rules that govern us. We're not beholden to anyone else to set those rules for us. We have that ability. So if we want to, you know, create a system that works for us, we can certainly try to do that. Christian.
I wanted to touch on that specific topic and then maybe turn to something else that is happening more direct to our area. First, I wanted to say this is my first year of being a part of the DPO and getting to help it just kind of be a part of the messy making that is democracy, and I'm extremely excited to be a part of that. I've noticed that there is always going to be issues that we are going to have like disagreements on. It's how we go about these issues in ensuring that we treat each other with respect in that sense, as well as not labeling people as in one whole monolith. I am a person that tends to do that myself, and I have to check myself quite a bit and ensure that it isn't something that is coming out of more frustration instead of more like actual thought, in the sense of like, is this person an actual, is their intent good? And I really do think that, at least I mean, I've been labeled as one of these people myself, and I haven't even voted yet. And the issue with that is that like you kind of just write me off without even really getting to know me. And I really hope that the culture of the DPO ends up looking at in trying to make that messy making, but also making friends out of this. And that, you know, like we may disagree on a vote, but we are actually all in the same party together and working towards the same goals. And with that, I kind of wanted to see about some thoughts on specifically like a lot of the times it seems that we kind of forget the rural working class voters. And that seems to be what is happening a lot with Pete DeFazio not winning as high as he did this time around. I watched as a PCP, many Democrats vote for Alex Garlotto for no reason other than that they felt like he was speaking more towards them. And we have to, as a party, figure out how do we convey a message that we are still there for those rural people, as well as specifically, let me get this. Oh, that's not touchscreen. Sorry about that. Recently, we've seen a lot of news articles demonizing certain swaths of working class voters, being racist demagogues and fascists. Yet, from reading all of these articles, it does not look like the reporters are actually talking to the timber workers themselves. I've been on the ground for Cat Stone's campaign and then spoke to many people, mill workers to tree fallers, and I guarantee you the majority of these people are not bad people. They may not understand some things that we may be more educated on certain issues, but they are just looking out for their pocketbook. They have families to feed. They have things that they have to actually worry about in society. And how would you, as the DPO chair, ensure Democrats do not fall down that same path again on demonizing our fellow workers when intrinsically our issue is not with our neighbors, but with the large corporations and propaganda that push out this false information?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And obviously that touches on the idea that, this mentality that of the 99% and the fact that, as people who care about our families and our lives and are not in complete control of the economic reality we live in, as well as the political circumstances that we live under, that we need to recognize our similar causes and our circumstances so we can pull together. Obviously, that's going to take us coordinating and pulling together, but again, not jumping to conclusions about each other. Being from Tennessee, people ask me, "Where's your accent?" It's like, okay, I never had one. I don't know why. But again, there are assumptions that we experience no matter where we live and where we come from, and the important part is that if someone expresses a concern, that we don't assume that they are doing it from a malicious, or hurtful perspective, that we assume positive intent, and recognize that some of us are going to have really great communication skills, but the vast majority of us are still working on those, and we struggle, we fail, myself certainly included. But I know that we are all in this party for reasons that are good, and we all join because we care about justice and care about solutions and care about people, whether we know them or not, whether they're related to us or not. And we do have to connect with those folks, those voters, those non-voters, those folks who we need to be a part of what we're doing, so that we are, not only representing them, but showing them. Don't tell them, show them, right? And so we have to create the systems and the programs that effectively show people. So appreciate that, Christian. So I see Jaden and then Mary.
Hello. I wanted to touch a couple things. One quick thing about I showed up a little late to this, so I apologize. But I did hear one full comment before we switch topics, and I just wanted to quickly comment on that, and then I'm going to switch over to this one. I heard a comment of there's a small group of people that is trying to silence the other, and I just want to say that as a relatively I feel like I'm part of a minority of many minorities. Actually, I have many minority identities, and I have a perspective that is very progressive, leftist, and is unpopular to the pro-billionaire establishment. And so I bring my perspectives, and feel immense pressure to be silenced from the county level, from the district level, and from the state level. And I hope that the next chair can do things, and the SEC actually, let me reword that. I hope the next this SEC that is freshly elected can work towards increasing transparency, because, for example, I would love a document that could be accessed by password that contains the entire SEC membership list that can be accessible to anyone at any time. Because right now the DPO has full control of that and hides it until they feel comfortable letting it out. And so, for example, our current chair, Casey Hansen, has been going around and campaigning for weeks before even the deadline for the chairs was over in early March. And our this candidate right here has only gotten the membership list a week ago to allow it to be campaigned. That seems not transparent at all. That seems unfair. And so in terms of silencing, I would really like for that to be known that the rules aren't being like that there's abuses of power that is not fair. And so in terms of silencing people, I just want it to be known that there's a lot of silencing going around. And the reason I want to bring this up is because, you know, the quote that says that people who are homophobic are usually gay themselves or have some kind of tendency that they're not willing to acknowledge within themselves. I feel like that's a little bit of that. So if you're worried about being silenced or like, if certain members are amongst the circle of establishment privileged people, if they're worried about being divisive and silenced, maybe people need to look in the mirror. Okay, and in terms of workers,
Hey, Jaden. Hey,
I would
real
like to
quick,
say
can we
there's
separate
Jaden,
those
hold
two
on
things?
just a second, buddy. I do want to give some time for some other folks. If this is
no,
another point you want to make, do you want to come back
Yes,
after we give Mary a chance to share what she wants to contribute?
I have a worker comment. Can I please finish?
I do want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak, but go ahead, Jaden. Just be mindful of that. Thank you.
For sure. Another unspoken rule is that you can't criticize the Democratic Party member, like the president, and I don't follow that rule. For example, Biden voted for NAFTA, and the reason we have a poverty in rural areas that used to be heavily Democratic and union, like Douglas County was a pro-union, blue Democratic county, and now it's one of the poorest in our state. And the reason for that is because certain memberships voted for things like NAFTA and signed by the president. And then Obama tried to pass the TPP, and thankfully he failed. And I hope that the current president doesn't try to bring that up again, because the TPP will devastate further in the industries of our country, and that is going to further impoverish workers. And I hope that kind of mentality is thought about in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Jaden. Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak a little bit about the connection between Dems and labor. Up here in Clatsop County, we've got, one of the major employers is the Wana Mill, and they're under the Steelworkers Union. And they go to work and they hear from their company that if cap and trade passes, they will literally lose their jobs. So we have a lot of Timber Unity folks up here who believe those things because that's what they're getting told every day. And the Dems really need to wedge that's driven between us and labor. We are traditionally the party of labor, and I think we need to reaffirm that connection and just take that back. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mary, and that's an important point. I want to direct people to look at the chat. Joanne had an excellent comment that I think nails it. That the issues we're dealing with in terms of rural working class, whether it's union or non-union, and this issue of the kind of diminution and the dissolution of the union strong communities in our rural areas and admittedly across the country. This idea that the two biggest issues are the message and the method of delivery. And so a lot of it has to do with framing, right? The Republicans and the conservatives have gotten really good at framing things in a way that like drives that wedge. And as somebody who has been a union member everywhere I've worked, where I was represented by a union in education and through state and federal employment, it's definitely important to understand, that, the effects of legislation as well as the effects of our messaging we need to dedicate our attention in both those places. As a party, I think those are important steps that we need to take, and especially with regard to messaging and how we can kind of reclaim the narrative. we need to all come together and figure out how best to do that so that we're framing things in a consistent way to really push back against a very strong opposition and conservative narrative from Republicans, timber unity, you name it. So thank you, Mary. All right, I see Darren with a hand up. I also want to encourage anyone else who hasn't contributed yet or hasn't had an opportunity to speak to please raise your hand and do so, especially those folks who have only recently gotten onto the forum. Feel free to raise your hand using the Zoom hand raise function. If you're having trouble with that, you can raise your hand on the screen, or if you feel like you're having trouble getting that all to work, I understand connections can be pretty spotty, and you might be using a trying to not use your video function, to maintain a better connection. Feel free to speak up, and we'll put you in the stack to contribute. But go ahead, Darren.
Really just to extend off what you were just saying, and sorry, I feel like I'm monopolizing a little bit because this is like the 20th time I've talked, but what can we do as the DPO to help that messaging? So, this year there's been a few bills where I've looked at the messaging coming from the legislators in the metro area and just kind of did a facepalm of like, that's not going to resonate with the people here, whether they're Democrats or Republicans or anywhere in between. They're going to be turned off by that messaging. What can we do as a DPO, as a party, to help that?
Again, this is an opportunity where I would love to turn that question back to all of you. I really want to get your input on how to answer some of these questions. So please raise your hands and how do we tackle that question? And if you can type that question in the chat so people can refer to it, that'd be also nice to, if you feel like you can do that, Darren. Having been an educator in classrooms, I know what this sound is like, but the people are waiting to figure out what they want to say and that kind of thing. I definitely, I want to encourage you to really, this is an opportunity to share what you think, and if you don't know, like, go ahead and ask a question regarding what you don't know. All right, Jenny, I see your hand up. I don't know if you're muted, Jenny. Looks like you're muted.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. There you
go. Before this meeting, I attended a meeting Jamie for Oregon was having with some wonderful school board candidates. And she gave this great little presentation about kind of messaging and the rural-urban divide. And I can't come up with the term right now she used, but there's trigger words and words that just are the same word means a different thing to a rural person as opposed to an urban person, etc. But I would like to see a list of those words. It's not helpful. It's helpful to me to know the concept, but I need more. I need the actual information. Like Darren kind of talks about it, about guns, but I don't know how to change my messaging. I don't know what is the urban message, what is the rural message. If we could develop, I don't know, part of Jamie was talking about having a workbook that she'd be sending out to people. I don't know if it's going to include that. I may message her and ask her if that could be possible, or if we at the DPO, through different sources like Jamie, through the rural, through the urban, could come up with those things. Maybe Indivisible has something about this. I don't know, but it's something that I am still confused about, and I need information. So when I'm out knocking on doors, I can speak properly.
Great, that's an important contribution, Jenny, and obviously I would love to see what Jamie McLeod Skinner and her team is producing there. That obviously we need to tap into all kinds of resources, whether it's someone like Jamie McLeod Skinner, whether it's just one of our PCPs in Curry County, or in Gillum or anywhere in the state, as well as people who are connected and organized and organizing in different organizations, whereas Rural Organizing Project, for example, or Cocoon working with farm workers and immigrant workers and migrant workers and things like that. So finding out like how do we share a message to different regions and different parts of the state that have different experiences, and really working on that framing. I think we don't again we've got a lot of perspectives within our structures of the DPO, and we can pull as many of them together as possible, but there are still even more voices and more experiences and more insights that we can tap into. We just need to do it in a systematic way, in a way that isn't just a one and done, but a kind of an ongoing process. Whether it's setting up not just a special committee to work on recommendations for how we address rural issues and rural concerns, but maybe even having something more formal or stable, or doing more work with the Rural Caucus to empower them to be more engaged in what the DPO is doing in terms of messaging and delivery and all of those things. So we can create our future. We're in charge. So they're all, whatever options we come up with, we can consider. I appreciate that, Jenny. Thank you. All right, and obviously, still want to remind folks that people are commenting in the chat, and there's some really interesting perspectives being shared there. The idea of studying the enemy and really assessing what they are doing so that we can create our own strategies. So, what else? Who else would like to contribute? Because I really do want to make sure we are focusing our attention and sharing what are your experiences? What are you dealing with? What are your concerns? There are a lot of things I've heard in my conversations with delegates and Democrats over the last few weeks, but I definitely want to hear from you all in this moment. All right, I see Mary, Colette, and then Christian.
I just wanted to ask, since we're all gathered here, what if people could speak a little maybe about strategies they've been successful with in recruiting PCPs. That's something that we struggle with out here.
That's a great question. Let's try to tackle that for just a second, if that's okay, Christian and Colette. Okay. All right. So yeah, what strategies have people found successful in connecting to, whether it's voters or PCPs, and getting more involvement in your counties and in your activities?
I'm happy to talk a little bit about that. Sarah Spansdale again, Jackson County. Personally, that's something I'm really passionate about. I love recruiting people to the Democratic Party, especially to get involved with the party, whether it's as a PCP or a neighborhood leader. And just one thing that's worked really well for me that I'm happy to share is well, for one, Southern Oregon is very lucky to have several C3 and NGO organizations here locally, like a lot of them going on that are very active. And when I returned to Southern Oregon after being up north for a while and being a mom, I just jumped into getting involved with those organizations and getting really just involved in my community, right? And through those opportunities, I built relationships with folks, and oftentimes, obviously, if it's healthcare for all, or if it's save the environment, climate change, stop a pipeline, like typically those are pretty like-minded people to our party. And just through those relationships and them getting to hear about what I have been able to participate in and what our county does here and the state, have been able to encourage a lot of folks to join. So that's just my 2 cents.
All right, excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Sarah. Rosa, are you wanting to contribute on this topic of how we can address and connect to more PCPs and that kind of thing?
Yes, I did. Hello, everybody. My name is Rosa Colquitt, And John, first thing I'd like to thank you for opening up this space to have this dialogue. Uh, I'm reading in the chat, and there are so many issues, specific issues about rural needs that I'm busily writing down. But one of the things I did want to contribute to the discussion, the question about recruiting PCPs, and I'm answering from a non-rural perspective. And so folks that are living in the rural area, perhaps they can even respond to some of the strategies I've used. I was Washington County chair for 2 years, and I've chaired many organizations. But what I found didn't work, and I learned it the hard way, is when it's time, when in the middle of an election, to go out and recruit PCPs or to recruit people because we need canvassers, or to recruit folks to bring into the neighborhood leader program, it never worked for me. And so I learned that I need to create relationships through the organizations that I'm already working with. And if I'm working, as an example, I've been focused on BIPOC communities, and I've successfully recruited people from organizations like the NAACP, but we were already working on other activities. And so there was kind of an open door. There was already in terms of having gotten to know them and established a relationship. So that, and this is, I don't know if it happens in all communities, but the Black communities that I'm working in, they're not necessarily rural communities, but they're marginalized. And so there is this wall of defense that they'll put up if I wait until there's an election and try to recruit people to do political kinds of things. So I think it's really important when we're working throughout the year. Now is the time. I'm actually trying to bring some folks into the Democratic Party now, and the election is not active. We've just gone through electing a president. That's one strategy that works for me, is working through the organizations and relationships I've already had. But the one thing I wanted to offer is if I wait until we're in the middle of an intense election, some folks in the communities I'm working in sort of put up a wall to me. So I'm very careful about that time, if that's helpful in terms of a strategy.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rosa. Definitely, I'm hearing the echo there, between what you and Sarah were saying. So thank you for contributing. That's excellent. All right, and I would love to take just a second to touch on those, because I think that those are really important points, because the idea, Rosa, you're talking about relationships, and whether it's inside the party or outside the party, and this is something I've been trying to emphasize throughout the campaign, is that we have to build relationships inside and outside the party, and if we can do that inside, we can do that outside, and vice versa. So there are a lot of organizations that are trying to tackle the issues that we also want to tackle as a party, and they overlap in terms of concerns as well as ideas for solutions. So makes sense that those would be great places for us to tap into each other. We don't just need to be asking people to come join us, right? As a party, we also need to do the work to join them in their community. So, thank you. All right, so Christian, and then Colette, and then I see Jenny raise your hand. Thank you.
If somebody hasn't asked a question or anything, I'm more than willing to wait until after.
Okay, thank you, Christian. So Colette, I'll call on you, and then Jenny, and then Christian.
Thanks, John, and thanks, Christian. Hi, everybody. My name's Colette. I live in Jackson County, and my pronouns are she and they. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Alameda fire, which affected my town of Talent, and then also Phoenix, our neighboring town, and South Ashland, and that was on September 8th. And I know that this summer was absolutely brutal for the fires, and I just also wanted to get an idea from folks on this call specifically, if you guys had fires in your area as well, because I know that here in Southern Oregon, every summer we struggle with the smoke. And, you know, I know that like specifically September 8th, like there were so many fires everywhere. And for us here, so Talent is a small town. We have about 6,500 residents, and about a third of our town actually burned on September 8th. And so we have between like 1,500 and 2,000 of our residents displaced. You know, and like it is everywhere in Oregon, like housing was already an issue, and we had, you know, little to no affordable housing before that. And so now, you know, we're like struggling, like really, really struggling. And so, like Lydia said at the very beginning of this, I am actually really excited because I recently was appointed to the Talent Council here. And so we're working super, super hard to try to get our families home. And it reminded me too, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was who was talking about Jamie McLeod Skinner. Maybe it was Jenny. But we're really, really lucky to have Jamie working currently as our interim city manager. So she's going to be with us for the next like 3 months, helping us work on this issue. But really, the struggle is real and there's no end in sight. So yeah, I don't know. September 8th was really, really hard, and we, you know, had little to no outreach from anyone in the DPO, which was like pretty disheartening personally. And you know, just for someone to like reach out and be like, how are you guys doing? You know, I mean, we had PCPs who lost their home. We had neighborhood leaders, like tons of people from all economic backgrounds, and specifically in Talent in Phoenix. The area that was burned was probably like the lowest income areas of town. So yeah, I don't know. You know, it's just, we're really struggling with that. And I just wanted to say that because I know that, you know, the smoke and the fires is something that we really do all kind of have in common, the horribleness of those summer months. And yeah, so I just wanted to mention that, and, you know, was interested to hear if anyone else had, you know, experienced any types of like loss from the fires. So thanks.
Thank you, Colette. And that's obviously, you know, beyond harrowing, and you know, as somebody who was, you know, up here, and we had smoke, but it obviously, you know, having your homes and your lives uprooted and threatened, and in some cases, you know, dismantled in that way, it's heartbreaking. Yeah, I do know that I've heard from some delegates that they have either encountered or heard of Republican parties mobilizing to try to assist and support people who were affected by the fires. And you know, as people who care about each other and care about our communities, you know, and obviously there are various crises that can occur, you know, year after year. It could be pretty interesting to see what we could do as a party to have an organized effort and be prepared for things like that, whether it's fires or other issues, whether it's climate change or you know, the issues with regard to racial justice, and being available for communities that are you know, facing deep crises and challenges. You know, sometimes those crises are ongoing, right? And you know, so we need to really turn our attention that way, I think, and see how we can be structured to be responsive to that. So I appreciate that. So let's see, Jenny, and then Christian, and then Kat.
Hi, first I'm going to answer Colette's question, at least as far as Lynn County goes. We had fires in 2 canyons on both edges of the county, north and south, and they came closer and closer. And frankly, in Lebanon, having lived in the Sierras and having evacuated 5 times for fire, including the last time when the house burnt down, I started packing my car. So, but Timber Unity and the Republican Party, they arranged feed for people's animals. We had an awful lot of rural people having to evacuate animals down to the county fairgrounds. And the Democrats, we didn't do anything. We didn't have any plan. Of course, most of that rural part of the county is mostly Republican, but I think if we showed up, it would be a good thing just because I care about people and I know what it's like to be made homeless by fire. And we're going to have other things like floods and earthquakes, and we're going to have fires again. Those were Santa Ana winds. That's Southern California come to Oregon, and it's going to happen again. So I'd like to see us develop some kind of thing. I don't know on a county level, and I don't know what's allowable. Like we have a food, we have like a trailer where we can do, hamburgers and stuff that we do at events. I don't know whether that's allowed at the county fairgrounds. I don't know. It's just a lot of questions. And we have a small amount of volunteers in Lynn County. So it would be really great if the state helped develop some ideas that we could put into planning and have it all planned ahead of time. So, because in an emergency, you don't have time to organize that.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. And I do want to make sure that we have time to, address this question that Colette posed and Jenny's comments as well. I know we had a lot of experiences across the state with regard to the various fires and among other crises. Does anyone want to contribute on that particular topic? And if you think of something you want to say later, you can certainly, feel free to comment at another time.
Well, I mean, I can just say, and Colette, has been a huge member of the mutual aid and, food deliveries and things that have gone on in Jackson County. And if nothing else, it's kind of goes back to those relationships that we're building in our community. If nothing else, we can support those, promote those groups and the work that they're doing, because they might be C3s and can't ever promote what we're doing, but we can certainly promote what they are doing and help them out in that way. So there's always that.
Thank you, Sarah. Does anyone else want to share on that topic still? The idea of fires and responsiveness to various crises?
I guess I'll just pop in.
Okay, Kat and then Christian.
And I've lived here for 66 years. I was born in Roseburg, raised in Roseburg, and we never, ever, 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 ever had smoke and fires like we had this past summer. But the fact is, we've been in a drought for 10 years. Climate change is here, it's now. Plantations burn hotter. And we should be prepared next summer for exactly the same thing. So the Republicans, they don't worry about if it's okay to do what they're going to do. They just do it. They don't care about the rules. And, they were out knocking on doors during the COVID pandemic in Coos Bay for a whole week. They don't worry about breaking the rules. They're crazy, and they have a whole different substance to them. And we need to understand them if we're going to be able to beat them.
Thank you, Kat. Christian?
I can kind of piggyback off that a little bit. I wanted to share a link with everybody, and it is a map of who the ownership of the timber is in Oregon, at least on the West Coast. And specifically, this is a really big issue that we as Democrats will face in all candidate elections, in especially Southern Oregon, as well as the coastal areas, where there is if you look in the chat, you see that the Timber Unity has done a lot of community work, and that groundwork really changes hearts and minds. And we have to figure out how to counterbalance that in a way that is productive and healthy. And with the biggest issue of having the propaganda being facilitated by, if you can see, mostly Wall Street stocks and large corporations. And like, we have to figure out, how do we battle against these giant, like, mega corporations? As the DPO, like, we need to have a new mindset and a new idea, I would say, to fully get into a real campaign in these areas, because Democrats will not win without fully understanding who they are talking to. And I know even Democrats here, majority of them are not like Kat. It is a extremely difficult situation when they don't want to talk to their neighbor. And we have to figure out how to do that, like in doing it on a level that they can see, like, and that they feel comfortable, that they don't feel belittled. And I just hope, the new chair, hopefully John, you're able to get that across with the committee that comes out to these rural areas, because we really need to look at these people as people. You know, like, we will continue to fall, and I watched my state in Wisconsin completely fall apart, and their whole way of, like, they can't do anything. A lot of times they're stagnant because of how they set up the Supreme Court. Like, they are now, they used to be so democratic, and it's going to take a long time to get that all back. You can destroy things faster than you can fix them sometimes, and I feel like right now that is something that's happening that we're not paying attention to.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that map with us. You know, having the right information, having deep knowledge, pulling all that information together, and creating constructive solutions and guideposts for how we address not only the lived experience, but the legislated circumstances around those experiences, so that we have good policy that we can use to turn the circumstances around while also having a good messaging and delivery. I think that I'm hearing a lot of that from a lot of you, so thank you for contributing. I want to give Jaden a chance to talk, and then Lydia.
So I think in order to help bring back these areas, it's going to take really strong leadership from our elected Democrats and the governor, and maybe the next governor. And you know, there's a lot of policies that that can bring more work to these areas, and it's going to be a hard battle to, you know, bring back work to rural counties so that we're not as living in much poverty. And I hope that that alternative energy sources can bring jobs over to rural areas for things like wind and solar and geothermal. And you know, it's going to take a lot of effort. Even I think policies, even like universal housing, policies that aren't really considered mainstream, aren't really, like, for example, Medford is trying to outlaw camping along their greenway because there's a lot of homeless people there, and some of those people are homeless from the fires. So it's creating this situation where capitalism says we don't want to give people free things because that makes them lazy, and then we have, and also that isn't, if you're a real estate agent or a housing company, you don't make money by giving people housing. So, working outside of that mindset to say that housing is a human right, healthcare is a human right, education is a human right, and offering it to the people. And the way to make that happen is to have progressive taxation. And, there's a lot of states all over the country that have Democratic majority, all three states of legislatures, and yet we don't have the strong leadership that targets the imbalance of justice, of power from really ultra rich people, and using that to benefit people. And I think that would be a really great way to win back a lot of people from these Republican areas who feel that they are not being cared about, because it offers these things universally. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Jaden. And Lydia, I'm looking at the time, 7:24.
Oh, sure. Yes. Well, I just wanted to say that Christian's map, well, first I want to acknowledge Jaden's comment, which I think is like the dream and what we need to work towards all over the place. But I also wanted to say to Christian that that sharing maps like that is what is important to me personally, as somebody who lives in Portland. I'm a map-aholic, and I'm always on Google Maps looking at what different places are like and trying to see like what it is. And I look at those little squares and those little plots and those little, areas where it's just been clear cut, in that part of Southern and Western Oregon. And it's always so amazing to me. But the fact that you showed that shows me that something I didn't understand, which is that I kind of thought that was all national forest land that has been like leased, or however they do the logging, like I don't understand how that goes exactly. And I didn't understand that was all private land. And so like that is the kind of discussion that I feel like would be so important for the people in Portland to understand about how hugely important it is for you guys to, for everybody that lives outside of the city limits that isn't familiar with logging in general, like I come from Georgia, from the other end of the Georgia Pacific, that's like where it is. And logging there, completely different than it is here, and I'm just struck by how interesting and, just perspective, just giving so much perspective to that. So I just want to say thanks. And, yeah, and that's part of the issue is not knowing everything, and part of the solution, I guess, is discussing it. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Lydia. And just recognizing the time, I do want to make sure that we extend the invitation again to folks who haven't had a chance to contribute yet. I'm not calling you out, I'm just offering that we do want your insights and your take on things, and especially if there's something that you're experiencing in your communities that we haven't gotten to yet. So definitely would appreciate it if you do have something you want to contribute, but don't feel like you have to. While you are thinking, I do want to point out that Susan Church asked in the comments, is there a map that shows the east side? Do you happen to know, Christian?
Unfortunately, I think they are focused so far mostly on the timber areas on the west coast because they're the Coast Range Association. They have been working on, from what I understand, on more maps. But they take a lot of money and resources going to each county commission or county clerk and having to buy records. And so I think it's taking them a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I know that I've seen maps like that. In fact, I was going to ask, if that map was a product of the work of Chuck Willer, and here he is. Here is Chuck Willer. Because I know when I lived in Benton County, I have had the chance to interact with Chuck. He was doing work in the, am I right, Chuck was in the same office as the Corvallis Environmental Center? Yeah, exactly. So where I was board president, he was doing work in that tiny little shared office, but putting out some interesting stuff. Chuck, I know you just chimed in, but we're talking about rural issues and land ownership and things like that. Do you have anything that immediately pops to mind you'd like to contribute?
Well, I just received, I think, 4 or 5 new county maps from our GIS mapper. So I think we're getting close to about 2/3 of all Western Oregon counties, county-specific maps that they won't be on the Coast Range website until Andrew gets them up there tomorrow or the next day. So the county level mapping will be advanced. We'll have twice as many counties up there as we have today.
All right, thank you, Chuck. And there was a question in the comments before you got on that asked if there were any such maps of the east side of the state. Do you know of the existence?
Not ours. We don't.
Okay.
We're not doing the east side, but it'd be interesting to get down into Lake County. There's large industrial forests down in Lake County, owned by a billionaire family out of Seattle. That would be interesting to map.
All right. Thank you, Chuck. Where are you living these days, Chuck?
Well, I live in Corvallis, but I do have property on the coast south of Yachats in Lane County. So I'm over there quite often, and that's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Chuck. Thank you for jumping in and sharing. Appreciate it. We need the professional input as well as the personal input if we're going to pull all of our ideas together for practical solutions. So thank you. Colette, I see your hand is up.
Thanks, John. This feels like a kind of an intense shift that I'm about to make. I don't really know how I feel about it. I just feel the need to acknowledge the fact that I know that probably like all of our counties are having to witness and struggle against like the really like strong organizing of militias and like white supremacy groups. So yeah, I just kind of thought that I should just say like in solidarity, that totally sucks. And I think that probably other people have a little bit more to add, but I know that like here in Jackson County, we have a lot of like grassroots community groups that are trying to organize like against these efforts. It's incredibly daunting and like pretty like terrifying as well. And I also just want to acknowledge like that as far as like rural counties go, I know that like, parts of Jackson County are like way more populous than a lot of other counties. And so I just also want to acknowledge like the stories that I've heard of rural folks that, like are literally too afraid to be able to organize in their communities because like they will be targeted by these militias. And, especially like in some of our counties that aren't organized, like I can only imagine that like that is a huge barrier to being able to organize. So yeah, just wanted to, bring it up because that's a huge issue. And yeah, also just, I really have enjoyed this conversation. And I think it would be really nice for us to kind of like look at this as sort of like a jumping off point, because like I would really like to be able to have these conversations with y'all like again, so that this isn't just like a one-time thing, because I feel like I'm learning so much from people from different areas, and just like, I don't know, Zoom is really great. I know it's like we're not in person, but I don't know if we'd be able to be doing this if it weren't for Zoom. And yeah, anyways, I will, yeah, just wanted to bring that up. Thanks.
Thank you, Colette. And I see Mary, I see your hand up. I do want to, just comment real quick that we're not at our time limit, but the time that we set for the event. But I do want to make sure that this conversation continues. This is obviously very important that we continue to address these topics. I know there are things that I've heard that didn't happen to come up in this conversation that I think we still need to take the time to bring into the conversation and apply to our thinking as we innovate and as we create solutions. I've heard a lot of ideas out there, whether it's creating more collaboration across county party lines, whether it's like sister counties where you can share ideas, maybe even resources and volunteer efforts and all kinds of things, for the state party to help facilitate those kinds of connections. But really what it comes down to is pulling us all together and coming up with something concrete and actionable. I've talked quite a bit about having us work together to create an equity-centered and community-focused strategic plan, something that we look at the short, middle, and long term, 2, 4, 8 years and beyond, right? And think about how we need to address all the various issues that our party is trying to conquer, whether it's the issues that our communities face, rural and otherwise, whether it's the legislative activities we need to accomplish, the electoral victories we hope to win, all of those various aspects of the party. We all have our ideas and we all want to focus on different things, and having a clear plan, I think, and getting all the input from folks like yourselves to help us structure that plan in a effective and shared way, way that it's a shared vision, shared values coming together to create a shared plan. I think that's a big step toward equity and toward making sure that all of our voices are not just heard, not just considered, but incorporated into the work we do in a systematic fashion. And I think that I would love to continue this conversation beyond this 7:35 time that we are at now. And Mary, I definitely want you to say what you were wanting to say. But Mary, when you're finished, I will check with the rest of the group and see who wants to continue to talk and continue this conversation. I want to encourage everyone that, we want to make sure everyone not just feels valued, but is valued in the work that we do. So I don't want to stop this conversation if people still have things that they feel like they need to get off their chest. So Mary, did you want to comment?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to express my support of you, Colette. I feel that as well about the militias. We had some of the folks from Portland kind of come into our community. Haley Adams was working at Safeway by my house for a while. So that was interesting. We had weekly flag waves when it was sunny. The militias, they call themselves the Sons of Liberty. So that was interesting. But we did notice that once the rain started, it died down a little. But yeah, it's I feel you is what I'm saying.
Thank you for sharing, Mary. Yeah, I think there are a lot of harrowing experiences across not only our party but the state that need our collective support and attention. And so thank you for sharing that, Mary and Colette. All right, so obviously I want to make sure that people who need to go and do other things have the opportunity to do so, but I also want to invite anyone who wants to continue the conversation for the next 10 or 15 minutes. I don't want to shut you off if you feel like you still have things you want to say. I see Jenny's hand is up. Go ahead, Jenny.
You were talking earlier about PCPs, and I got distracted by the fire question. Our neighborhood leader program is, and we encourage all our PCPs to be part of that we are reaching out. We've sent out our first postcards, and we're reaching out to all the young under 25 non-affiliates. And we're figuring out if they're Democrat leaning or otherwise, and collecting that data for the van and for ourselves. And we've also set up a committee that will be, every time we get new Democrats registered, we're going to make sure we reach out and contact them and welcome them to the party and see how we can help them.
All right. Thank you, Jenny. That's excellent. Yeah, as somebody who was for a couple of years the first chair of the Neighborhood Leader Program in Multnomah County, got it off the ground and innovated it. We tapped into something that, I want to recall back something that Dr. Rosa said, that, we can't just go to people when it's election time. And so the design that I set up was for us to go every season, and I know that doesn't work for every community because, some of you are dealing with difficulty reaching each other through the snow and conditions, but obviously we have to innovate in the ways that we can develop through technology and creativity to be able to make those connections, reach more people, develop the party from the voter on up, right? Voter to governor, make this state party as responsive and connected as possible, and really integrate the work that we do at all of our different levels so that we can really have more opportunities to share in sharing the load that so many of us have joined feeling like there's a burden on our backs, that our communities need us, and it sometimes it's hard to feel like our perspectives are being heard, accounted for, and turned into concrete action. But I think that opportunities like this, and we can do things even more structured than this. I've done work through family programs and things like that, where we work on communication skills and active listening and building relationships. And there are people with that kind of experience all through our party who've been teachers and educators and social workers and have done the work where they have to be patient and help people work through the toughest experiences of their lives. Certainly working in a hospital now, I recognize that those experiences can be embarrassing and frustrating, and people don't necessarily want to talk freely about them. And so finding ways to account for their needs is going to be important. And I think that we've got a lot of individuals and communities across the state. I know we've been focusing on rural communities here, but these kinds of concerns and challenges for the party and for those communities are common threads. And so, I want to encourage that we set up listening sessions and activities, but opportunities not just where we're talking and listening to each other, but really focusing on connecting one-on-one and building relationships, as well as building our awareness and knowledge base, so that we can turn those relationships and that awareness and knowledge into those plans of action. It's one thing to point out problems, it's another thing to devise solutions, and then it's another thing entirely to actually implement them, be willing to assess their efficacy so that we can modify and change them. I gave a speech several years ago that actually was talking about how the Democratic Party is a tool shed full of all these tools, and sometimes tools get worn out, they need to be replaced or modified, or we need to get a better version of that tool. And I think we need to recognize that as a party, we have that opportunity, but we also have that responsibility to work together to create the tools that we need and to really be as innovative and creative as we can be. So I appreciate all of your input and insights throughout this opportunity, this rural forum. I definitely want to check in with the group if you want to continue talking, and for how long. If anyone feel like it's time to go, feel free to raise your hand, and we can thank you for being here. All right, thank you, Joanne.
I'm definitely more than happy to support, as said in the chat, doing this again in the future with Zoom. So hopefully we can be doing this again soon, because I definitely feel like it was really helpful. Thanks, everybody.
All right, great. Thank you, Sarah. And LD, I saw you waving. Thank you very much. Any final thoughts from anyone else they want to help us end on? All right, well, I appreciate all of you for being here and for all the work you do. And thank you for coming together and being supportive of each other in this moment. And I hope that we can continue to pull together and build a collaborative team that that really engages all of ourselves and in a heartfelt way turns that concern for each other into a collective action and a collaborative effort to solve all the problems that we all joined this party to solve. So thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Dr. Rosa.